Welcome to Our Modern Heritage, the Home and Family Culture podcast. I'm your host, Jody Chafee, and I'm excited to welcome Stacey Piercey to the podcast. Stacey has homeschooled her 3 teen boys for over a decade and is an entrepreneur. She is a subject matter expert in human-computer interaction and has managed teams of 2 to 200 in everything from special needs care and debt management to .com startups and online advertising. She speaks at conferences about defining success for yourself and your children. Her young entrepreneurship program, Kids to Market, has helped hundreds of kids create a business rooted in their own passions, which each and every one of us has something unique to offer. She believes business plans are optional and giving back to your community is key. Welcome, Stacey. So excited to have you here.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
So I'm super excited to talk about this because as you know, I recently hosted a summit about raising entrepreneurs, and you talk about this idea of, you know, defining success. What does it look like for our children and for ourselves, right? And I love what we were talking about before is a hit record, and so I'm excited to review that with our audience. But you know, there's so much here to this idea. So to start out, though, how did you stumble into this idea of, you know, this program, the entrepreneurship program for the kids, or how did you fall into this idea of learning how to define your success?
Well, the entrepreneurship portion had to do with I was part of a homeschool co-op, and well, I'll kind of back up from that. So I'm, running my own company with teams, doing usability for software implementation, and in the process of having 3 kids through all of that. And my oldest one went to a sort of Waldorf-inspired art school for kindergarten, but he hit about
Cool.
April or May and threw himself on the parking lot ground crying, realizing that next year he'd have to go full time, and he just thought that was for the birds. So I said, okay, well, we'd always considered homeschooling, but how do I do that and still run a company at the same time? So we kind of, jigged things around and figured it out and decided that we would give this whole homeschooling thing a try. And I tried to kind of run a company in the background, and my husband owns his own company as well, doing software as a service. So I started stringing out a lot of my projects and offering more on a consulting basis how to help other young entrepreneurs launch their business, right? So gave them all the tools and the information that they need to get themselves up and running. And that was organic. People come to me and go, I want to start as a freelancer and an independent contractor. How do I do that? So I would support them through doing that. I don't know how to market. How do I market myself when I'm the only person and I don't have a marketing budget? So how do I do that? And it just sort of evolved and mushroomed. And sometimes I didn't know the answer, so I'd have to research the answer to be able to support them. Simultaneously, I've got homeschoolers, coming to me for support and coaching on how do you do your style of homeschooling, or, oh my gosh, they're not reading yet, or, how do I know that they're learning anything, and how do I know I'm not ruining their lives? And, what was so interesting about that is that the questions were really similar. So the questions between I can't leave my employee life, and I don't know what to do, and I'm really worried about health benefits, and I'm worried that I won't be able to support my family, to the same kind of level of worries. It's like jumping off of a cliff, right? You're free falling to say, I just have to trust that I know that everything is going to be okay. And homeschooling is a leap of faith, just like being an entrepreneur. So they were starting to mirror each other very closely. Yep. And through that, the board that we homeschooled with ran these homeschool co-ops where you could teach anything you wanted as a parent. And they did them once or twice a week. I can't remember what it was. And, would you like to do that? And then it turned in, will you run it? Because nobody else will. Yeah, I'll run the yeah, I'll do that. And I'll find other people to teach. There's always one empty spot. And so as the coordinator of the co-op, of course, I have to leap in and teach stuff, sometimes pulling it literally out of my ear because, oh my goodness. And they're 6 to 17 years old, right? And it rotates through different series of classes. And I taught analog coding because I'm the software engineer and work in usability. I was a dancer, so I taught dance classes. I've taught, ed classes. I've taught gross science, we all know what that looks like. And then I got a little bored, I have to say. And part of it was because you're just repeating school. And that was not really how we homeschooled. We don't repeat
Yep.
school. We don't do school at home. We have
Mm-hmm.
our own model and structure in how we do that. And part of that model, even if it wasn't intentional, was building these sort of enterprising skills, these important things around defining success.
Yeah.
So if I want my child to be successful and I can't stick them in a school and go, well, I know if they got good grades at the other end, then they're going to be successful, right? Because that's what the system tells us will happen, but it's all on me. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't do school at home, in part because I have no interest in teaching trig, but or I don't need to know the GDP of India in grade 4. Like it just, the whole thing seemed ridiculous to me. So we're saying you can learn anything you want, but there has to be some aspect of that learning that builds in independence and self-direction.
Yeah.
It has to be critical thinking. We have this problem, think, solution, and everything you do can go through that cycle. Perseverance. How do you push through the boring in order to get to the other end when you're one butt cheek playing? Benjamin Zander calls that in his TED talk, where he's saying, when they move from that plunk, plunk, plunk piano and they kind of get to this point where all of a sudden they're leaning in and they're lifting up on one butt cheek. So they're one butt cheek playing. So, how do you persevere to get past the difficult and the boring and the discomfort to come out the other side of really embracing your experience now? Independence was a big one for us.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity. And that
Yep.
was sort of the last one, because those are our innovators. In the future, these are the
Yeah.
innovative people, are the ones that they can creatively come up with a solution to anything, even if no solution is present,
Yeah.
because we don't know what kind of jobs they're going to have in the future. And there was no such thing as a social media manager when I was in high school. That's
Right.
a full-on legitimate, currently hiring role that now people are taking classes for and doing, but there's still nothing in the school system that teaches them how to walk out the door. I mean, if they were influencers or they're on social media, if their parents let them be on social media, lucky those kids,
Mm-hmm.
because they understand the skill set behind what we're doing. So I could see that there's these skill set, and I'm in a co-op and I don't have to teach school if I don't want to, because it's a homeschool co-op.
Yep.
So I said, hey, let's teach them entrepreneurship. Let's teach them how to start a business. Let's just
Nice.
do the full-on B school. And they thought I was insane. They just said, some of them are like 6, right? I'm like, I
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
can. I had no idea, right? I actually fully anticipated it was going to be a hot mess, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. But they rocked it. I was shocked. I could
Wow.
not believe it. And I give nothing out. So everything is fed from as opposed to delivered, because
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to me that they're taught through choice and
Yeah.
autonomy and sovereignty, that we recognize that in this role, there's no marks, there's no gold stars. You're not beholden to anybody else but you in this venture. And it really is about your passion and hard work that you get to
Yep.
the other end. So I don't do business plans. The
Right.
second I pulled out a business plan in that first class, I swear the light drained from their eyes. It was like a piece of paper stapled. It was ridiculous. It's like, you don't have to use it. So they turned it over and doodled on it.
Nice.
That was the last business plan I brought forward. I'm like, okay, no more worksheets. That doesn't seem to work very well. And some of them did it and some didn't. They totally get avatar creation, creating your
Mm-hmm.
customer avatar, who's your ideal customer, but they do it like paper dolls. I bring in magazines and they cut out their ideal customer that way. And the teens do something different. Sometimes they make it, like I give them a form that they can fill out. Well, I'd like to do a business plan. Okay, so I introduce really neat, innovative forms of planning a business that exists right now, like
Mm-hmm.
business model canvas or the lean startup method, or
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, let me show you something. So I wait until they ask. It was transformative. So I said, really, you need a deadline. Everybody needs those SMART goals, right?
Yep.
So that it's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. That time bound's such an interesting and important piece.
Yeah.
So let's run a children's business fair. You mean I actually get to sell this? Yeah, well, that's the whole idea. I actually want you to make money. Can I keep the money? Yes. Well, the teenagers really had a hard time. Okay, wait a second. How much money can I make? Well, as much as you can make, I guess. I still don't understand. What's the upper limit? There's no upper limit. You can make as much as you
Right?
want. And then I got one butt cheek, right? So they're
Uh-huh.
sitting back like this all the way through, and all of a sudden they're leaning, and then the class going, okay, tell me more. Show me how I can do
Yep.
this. And the day of the very first fair that I ran, it was so transformational. They stood a little taller. They stopped talking into their armpit. Kids who have genuine social anxiety, or they're neurodiverse. There's a lot in homeschooling. You know, that we've got more neurodiverse children than we do neurotypical children in homeschooling, for
Yeah.
sure, because it
Yeah.
almost is forced upon these families, and they make the best entrepreneurs, especially the ADHD and autistic kids.
Wow.
Absolutely. Because what is a business but a hyper focus?
Yeah.
And it gets to
Yeah.
be their own hyper focus. And now they get to be paid for their hyper focus. So not making any eye contact, I can't sell, which I encourage. If you're an introvert, you just look at Bill Gates. He's got to be the most introverted individual I've ever seen. And you totally can do this. You just have to hire a mouthpiece, right? So let me show you how to record a video, or hire your really annoying sister to be your salesperson at the business fair. So I fully encourage them to stay
Becoming
introverts and be
resourceful.
quiet. Find a
Yeah.
way to delegate the things you're not good at. And it was just those kids who didn't think they could sell were just making it move. Most of them sold out. I think a lot of them sold out because they went around buying each other's stuff, which is fine. They would make money and then immediately go and spend the money. And they have this sort of dollar amount in their head that's sort of the perfect amount. I want to make $10 so I can buy those Pokemon cards. They make anything more than that $10 point and they think they're millionaires and they want to give it all away. You know, I'm going to, which is
That's
awesome.
beautiful though, right?
The first, they're giving by nature, is what I've
Mhm.
learned over the few years I've been doing this. And you got your top 4 or 5, right? Church is the first one that they want to donate to, because I
Mhm.
talk in my class about you need to give back to the community that supported you in your efforts to become an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. Whatever that community is, they propped you up. And now it's important that you support them so others can have the same benefits and the same advantages that you had. Usually animal charities or rescues of some kind are really popular. Combating homelessness is a really big one. Foreign aid is another really big one. And then I have the rare one or two that actually builds a social enterprise, where it's actually built into the mission and the point of the business
Wow.
itself, right?
Yeah.
Is to raise money. That's not as common, but yeah, it was interesting. So I get to the end of that first fair, and then I've got parents going, that was amazing. My kid didn't even want to do math before, and they're multiplying decimal points now. And I went, really?
Yes.
It took me by surprise. And so what the big message came from, I can't believe anybody bought anything. I wish I would have made more because I could have made more money. Um, what was the other one? That was so much fun. I couldn't believe it. I can't wait to start a new business because I don't want to do the same one. It was so much fun starting a business. I hear I'm proud of myself. I hear
Mhm.
I feel valued. I hear I can do it myself. So you can see all the way through it that these are the foundations of a successful child.
Yeah.
That communication of self-sufficiency,
Yeah.
independence, a can-do attitude, resilience. I failed. It's okay. It doesn't mean I'm a failure. It
Yeah.
just means that I failed at
That
this
growth
attempt.
mindset.
That's
Mhm.
exactly right. So they said, will you do it again next year? And I went, okay. So I did it again next year, and the next year, and the next year. And then it started to trickle out, and people are going, will you come to our homeschool board and do it? Will you come to our school board to do it? Will you come and do it for H? Will you come do it for Scouts? Will you? And I can only go so far. so this fall I launched an online course, sort of, doing the same thing, and it's been pretty good. I think I sort of launched the idea of it. Lots of people reached out and said, well, let me know when
Yeah.
it's ready, and it literally went live like 2 weeks ago. So, and
Wow.
it's been going well. Yeah.
Wow. That was an amazing story. And I'm just like, so many, I'm trying to tally in my mind, like all the things that you say, basically what I'm hearing you saying, like to define success for our kids is that autonomy, that independence, and that capacity to to self-actualize
Yeah.
what they envision for themselves. So many of us, we think we have to define success by, is my kid getting good grades? Are they complying to school rules? Are they getting along with their peers? And these kinds of things. And it's like, well, yeah, getting along with your peers, that's important, right? We should, right? I think it shows a social and emotional intelligence, right? But as far as like grades and school rules, like those constructs are so abstract and like things that are really only applicable to being in school. And
Yeah.
so it's like in our when kids start getting a taste of this kind of an experience that you just described, it's like they get a taste of their potential and this idea that they can get passionate about something. When at school, if they get passionate about something, the teacher's like, pay attention, come back to me, what I'm talking about and what we're
Yeah.
doing right here in school. And it just cuts off their desire even to explore or go deep into something, because they're not getting any encouragement around it.
Yeah. It's
And
not very motivating.
no, it's not. And it's like you have to do what the teacher is telling you have to do, and you're just like, well, I don't want to do that. I'm talking from a lot of experience here now, growing up in the system. No, but it's like that. What you're talking about too, it resonates so much with me, because like my life and my husband and I growing up, like we were always told, like, here's the script, check off these boxes, and at the end of it, you're gonna be successful. And throughout that whole process, we never learned how to listen to our own voices, our own hearts. We never learned to figure out what we could explore and be passionate about. And now we're looking back and going, wait, that was supposed to be success? How, what? And now we're floundering. And I look around and I see so many people around in my generation that are floundering. And we have the success, quote unquote, we've done the degrees, we have we checked off all the right boxes. But as far as success, like real success goes, like we're moving back in with our parents, and we have student debt that we're going to be paying off for the rest of our lives. And it's like the definition, even our definition of success, it's not, we're not achieving it. And so it's like, okay, now we're in a downward spiral where we already felt like we don't know who we are. And now we're spiraling even more because we're not successful. And so I want this conversation I wish I could broadcast it to everyone in the whole wide world. No, and that's the idea, right? But I want parents to start to realize that what defines success is actually the independence, the autonomy. What I call is mastery education, where when you describe that one butt cheek thing, it's like, I'm so excited about this thing that I want to know everything about it until I am just totally geeking out about it. And it defines who I am because I love it so much. But kids don't have the opportunity when their lives are so over structured to the point where they don't even know how to adult, right?
Yeah. Well, if you're defining success, I mean, you say that they're never asked. I think that's probably part of the issue, is that
Mm,
what's key in that is choice, right?
yep.
That's that sovereignty. How do you define success? How would you know that you're successful? And maybe that should be a standard question asked of every high school student, and it not be attached to the outcomes that are in the environment that they're in. And you've got
Right.
to give, you know, creds to the teachers that try to work this and weave this in, because
Yeah.
they're beholden, their jobs are on the line for making sure that they teach all those standards and everything,
Yep.
the core standards that are out there. And to be at all creative in that is a challenge, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the whole idea of allowing any level of creativity when you've got 25 to 35 kids in your class, say, well, I would like to give you more freedom and more choice in the projects that we're doing. I don't have time to mark 30 independent papers other than the book that we're learning. I would love to give
Yeah.
you that kind of freedom, but I don't have the time. It's logistically impossible to do that. So it's systemic, and it's nobody's fault. It just doesn't seem to be moving us forward, and we're
Yeah.
changing, right? We're in this sort of innovation stage as
Mm-hmm.
far as progress that we can't keep up. And those 21st century skills are so important. And we hope I mean, it's built in. You look at the core standards and you can see that this builds creativity and this is supposed to build problem solving, and
Right.
they should be able to do it independently. But if it comes from a poor level of motivation because they're not interested in the topic,
Yeah.
then the learning isn't intrinsic and it's not deep enough, right? So how do you incorporate schooled kids or not schooled kids, homeschooled or otherwise, those entrepreneurial skills,
Mm-hmm.
or even the opportunity for them to define success and what that looks for if the parent hasn't gone through that exercise, right? I mean, it's even as simple as defining SMART goals, like your
Mm-hmm.
specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, right?
Yeah.
If you're not doing that and saying, I was successful in whatever venture you're doing, if they're not going through the exercise of setting goals so that they can actually
Mm.
feel success, I think even getting really great grades at the end of high school and, plunking them out on the other side and saying, like we were saying before, you're adulting now. You had to ask to go to the bathroom not but a month ago with your hand raised, but now this is it. You're on your own, and we're going to judge you for your ability to move forward as an adult without necessarily the skill set. Yes, we know that you can learn in an academic subject, but there's so much more to life than that. And then where do they go? They go immediately off to university because it's familiar.
Right.
There's a familiarity there. I know that I'm successful in school. The irony is that a lot of very successful high school students bomb university because of the level of independent learning that's required. I bombed. I wasn't on a great student. I went into university and I bombed miserably. And then when I kind of figured out, I really, really wanted to be there though. So I was
Mm-hmm.
super motivated to figure out why I was such a terrible student and, manage that and fix that. But I'd been given so little choice, through my school years, that
Yeah.
I spazzed out for 4 years. I must have changed my major like 8 times. It was crazy because it was so exciting. I was irritated that I couldn't take more courses. I took summer, spring and summer classes constantly, and I have a whack of education now in everything
Mm-hmm.
imaginable. And I kept going back to the point where the human computer interaction was, while I was working as a producer of a .com startup, I audited a master's degree in human computer interaction so that I could have
Nice.
it. I wanted to go to the classes and learn, but I wanted to do the work in the company I was in. They gave me the time off, and the university prof was like, this is brilliant. I wish more people would come to me, but they're so worried about getting that piece of paper.
Yeah.
I said, no, success for me in this whole exercise is I get to take exactly what I want out of what you teach, and then I'm going to go and see if it works. And I'm going to help the company that I'm part of sitting in on venture capital meetings and looking for funding and getting this started, to see them successful by having greater shopping cart or less shopping cart abandonment. I want to see them make more money. But there's something wrong with the usability of this site and I don't know how to fix it, because as software engineers, you're not typically taught that.
Mm-hmm.
So I went
Mm-hmm.
off and found the other thing, that sort of, it's like build your own adventure, or, make your own
Yeah.
fantasy books, right? That's, if school could offer more autonomy and choice
Yeah.
rooted in that child's definition of success in a series of defined goals, I think that they would feel that autonomy more, and there would be more one butt cheeking going on.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, I love this term.
Yes, that's
Well,
Benjamin Zander, and he talks about the piano player who goes from plunking on the piano to one butt
that's
cheek playing
awesome.
because they're
That's so
they're
awesome.
diving into the music and enjoying it,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Yeah.
and that's what you're talking about. It's like that is the difference between, I mean, I think so much of the system and even us as parents and teachers, we're so afraid of giving children autonomy because we think they're gonna sit there and go, I don't know what to do.
Well, they might
And
start there.
they might, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But then they might also start exploring and going, what am I going to do? And then the only difference is having a mentor that's saying, oh, you want something to do? Well, let's go figure something out together
Yeah.
as parents, let's go figure something out. And then that difference, that desire is just the difference. It makes all the difference, because when children have that autonomy, when we all have that autonomy, we are self-motivated, self-driven to go to achieve that goal, rather than because if we're constantly being pushed and prodded, number one, we're not motivated, and number two, we're not going to learn anything, and number three, we become psychologically, we deteriorate, because we start to think less of ourselves. We start to,
Yeah.
we don't think
We become
there are so
automatons.
many, there's
Yeah.
so much that it's like, and like there's all these studies out there talking about how like it's the affluent kids and the kids who are trying to get the A grades and all these things, they're the ones that end up having the most problems. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's counterproductive, in that those are the kids who are taking the ADHD drugs when they don't need them so they can excel at school, or they're the ones who
Yeah.
are depressed and anxious and suicidal, and it's just such a tragedy that this pressure
Mm-hmm.
to meet those standards is completely destroying that
They're
concept of
living somebody
success.
else's definition of success. That's
Yeah.
essentially what's coming down to it. I mean, there's a whole model of schooling. You guys have it, a democratic schooling for self-directed learning, like Sudbury, the Sudbury model.
Uh-huh.
Summerhill in the UK runs that way, where it's a full school with full success. They go full time, but they
Mm-hmm.
have autonomy and choice and say, even right down to how they deal with conflict resolution. So the model in a school setting exists for more choice and therefore more independent definitions of what success is. So it's interesting that it's such a difficult construct in order to. It's because so many people are asking for it. I mean, look at Seth Godin's manifesto of Stop Stealing Dreams, right? I was watching him in a TED talk. No, I don't know if it's TED talk. Yeah, it was a TED talk where he said one of the most frustrating things that he brings into companies is he brings them a whole bunch of those little lettered blocks. He says in his talk, and he says, I don't give them any direction. I just put it in front of them like these childhood building blocks and say, just build me something interesting. So then they freak out because there's no right answer. There's no
Uh-huh.
grade attached to it. And it's like, what do you mean build me something interesting? It's sort of that flexibility in your thinking that's attached to creativity that's missing so desperately
Yeah.
because we're trying so hard to get all those boxes checked. I mean, these poor teachers are asked to just, you got to get them through this because standardized testing is coming at the end of it, and if they don't do well on that test, then it's a definition of failure of the system. So instead of saying, well, let them teach in a way that's innovative and flexible and creative and see if they pass or fail the test, and it being data to say,
Mm-hmm.
well, these are all really talented and passionate people that want nothing but success for their children, the children that they're teaching. And if they're not passing the standardized test, but they're doing a really great job, is it the teacher that's the failure, the system the failure, the testing's the failure? And they're looking at it in the wrong way,
Oh yeah.
right? So it's, if you're getting low standardized test, is it a failure of the teacher, or it's the fact that standardized testing isn't an appropriate measure for the success of that classroom and that teacher and those kids, because it changes every year. You have this like outstanding classroom of kids, and then the next year you have just classroom management's unruly.
Right.
So
So
I
what,
just,
yeah,
yeah, go
no,
ahead.
this is so important, because it's like, what do we do when if we can't take our kids out of school, if we can't,
Yeah,
I want to be able to say, well, blank, do this. This is, have the solution. Well, how does teaching our kids about entrepreneurship help those parents and those children who, they can't get out of the system? They have to go to school, right? It's just like the way that our culture is right now. But I want to be able to have this conversation about, okay, this is a podcast about family culture. We can create that change that we
yeah,
seek inside of our families, even if we have to, we have to live in the world still, obviously. I have to go to school. We have to, we have to comply with the laws. Anyway, stuff like this. So how does teaching kids about entrepreneurship, I mean, you basically covered it, but what is it that we can do to encourage our children to become more entrepreneurially minded?
Yeah, to build those skills and to
Yeah.
think about it because it doesn't matter if you want to be a teacher or a nurse. Applying those entrepreneurial skills to those environments will do nothing but improve those
Well,
professions and your experience, right?
yes.
So what do you do, especially if you've got a kid who doesn't want to start a business? So my first advice is have them start their own business. I mean, even if it is, cats made out of leftover socks and then they sell it on the side of the road, or they bring it to them, to dance, or, you know, maybe not hockey. Why not hockey? They might like kitty pup. And I know they might, I played hockey. I didn't start, I danced when I was older, but I was the hockey and ringette player when I was younger. So, they're making hair bands or whatever it is, the business idea. But I mean, there's still a
Yeah.
small percentage of kids who actually want to start their own business. And truth be told, I have 3 teens in my house have no interest. 2 parents that
Oh,
are
okay.
entrepreneurs and one that teaches it. And they're like, meh, no way. Thank you. They'll get there eventually because you kind of learn what you live, I believe.
Yep.
So
That's
for
family
sure.
culture.
That's your family
It
culture.
keeps
So
coming. Well, it
they'll
keeps
get
coming
tired of
around.
working. Yeah, that's right. They'll get
It keeps
tired of
coming around.
working for
That's their
minimum
norm.
wage. Yeah, that's right. It does. It swings back. I can hear it in my older teen already when he says, "What are you going to do now that you're off school and the schools aren't even prepared to help you right now?" Because he's actually in public school, and he's like, "I don't know." And he's looking through Masterclass or maybe it was Masterclass or Coursera, and he lands on Sarah Blakely's Entrepreneurship Masterclass. I'm like, that's a good class. I
Nice.
loved that class. Take that class. So, but isn't it about ladies' underwear? Sure is. Take that class. That's a really good class. Yeah, I highly recommend that
You'll learn
class.
the skills because it's really about the skills and the mindset and like that
Yeah.
that to take ownership of, like you said, even if they don't want to start a business, they want to become, whatever job that's out there that they
Mm-hmm.
decide, they still need to imbue that thing with their own self actualization and their own desire and their own motivation to master that thing and to be as good as it in that thing as possible.
Yeah.
So
I would say creating that definition of success, even if there's 6.
yeah.
So how do you define a personal definition of success? Comes around just setting small goals. So if they set
Mhm.
small goals and they meet those SMART goals, and that's pretty easy to look up and how to set SMART goals. A SMART goal
Mhm.
can be a day long, and we begin to feel success in the goals that we set for ourselves, and that comes back onto us in the form of not necessarily self-esteem, but independence and self-confidence, because self-esteem is actually how you feel about yourself,
Mhm.
whereas self-confidence is about how I feel about my accomplishment of any task. So yes, I actually feel good about myself, but if I go and look at an opportunity and go, well, there's no way I can do that, that's
Yeah.
the difference, right? So you might have a child that has excellent self-esteem, but they don't have the personal confidence to take on any task and accomplish it. And
Right.
overcoming my failure at the beginning of university built that for me, because by the time I got out on the other end and I went from, I got kicked out of my first semester of college for a low GPA, to graduating with my degree with like a 3.87, right? So like I went from here to here. By the time I went through that, I genuinely believed I could learn anything. It might
Mhm.
be that I switched my major 8 times, but it still meant that I could learn anything. I mean, really what it is I have confidence even now, because even building this business, this entrepreneurship program for kids, this business, I'm in my 50s. This is an encore career, an encore business for me.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I have full confidence that I can pick up online marketing, because, the online marketing I did was in around the dot-com crash, and that was a long time ago, right? So I know that I can build in the tools that I need to be effective in social media. I don't even like social media. I'm pretty positive before I started this, I called it the toilet bowl of humanity. And yet I have to be on there because my demographic is on there. That's how
Yeah.
I'm being able to communicate. Not only that, but these kids get an opportunity to promote their businesses through my social media. It's part of my offering. Yes, I'll put you on my
Mhm.
Instagram and you can be on my podcast. And their eyes light up. This idea of having value, having a voice, being able to do something of an autonomous nature that they genuinely benefit from for themselves. It's for them and entirely for them. So if they're not going to start their own business and you want to build it into your family culture, is build opportunities for them to define success and be proud of themselves. Because like I was telling you before we recorded, I do not strive to be proud of my children. I want them to learn how to be proud of themselves. And if you're not setting goals that define success, they just don't ever think about it. And it has to be their own goal, right? You can't say, I'm going to teach you how to do math, or we're going to do social studies, or we're going to learn how to write critical analysis papers. And then according to a rubric, I give you a grade and a gold star. And that's your definition of success, was a project I created for you from a book you didn't even want to read, that you then write this essay and I say, you've done an excellent job. Do you walk away from that? And some of them do. Lots of kids love school. They walk away from that and they go, that's my definition of success, is that gold star. And when there are no more gold stars coming your way after you're finished school, this is when the meltdown occurs, because there's nobody providing you positive reinforcement anymore. You're not getting those pats on the back anymore. You know, there's nobody. I have actually a really good story. I worked at a salmon fishing lodge in northern Canada on the coast. It's so northern, you're not even allowed to have property there. So the salmon fishing lodge floats. It floats and attaches to the land. And when I stood on the end of the barges that the fishing lodge sat on, I can see grizzly bears and cougars poking their head out. I mean, we're really, really far north into the Canadian wilderness, right? So we're really, bald eagles just come and hang out. It's just kind of the way that it is. And
That's awesome.
I was cleaning staff for the summer, and the owner's son was the head guide. So he basically ran the lodge. And sometimes he was a bit of a jerk. So, you know, like he was like a surfer ski bum guy, you know, really good looking with the blonde hair, and everybody kind of loved him. And I did some extra work, right? So I am right out of high school, and I did some extra laundry or whatever. And for the guides, I don't have to do their laundry. I picked it all up and decided to do the laundry. I took self-initiative to do it because we were really, really busy. You know, it was fine. I laid it all out on a bench and I said to him, hey, Simon, I did everybody's laundry. And as he was going by, and you can hear what I'm doing, right? Look at what I did. He actually walked past me and pat me on the head and said, Stacey, I don't have time to positively reinforce you right now, but maybe I'll get back to that later. Oh, I was mad at him for, I was just seething for like hours. But then you sit with it for a while. It didn't take me long, until the end of the day. And I went, yeah, why did I need to do that? Why did I need to point out to him something that I did that just helped people out, and then not just to move on? Like, why wasn't it just a random act of kindness? Yeah. Why did I go through to get that gold star? Is that why I did it? Obviously, that's why I did it. And the learning in that moment for me, from that sort of, you do it because it's the right thing to do. You don't not do it because you're fear of being punished, and you don't do it in order to get the gold star. You just do it because it's the right thing to do and it needs to get done. And that's that mindset that you're trying to build in by having them set their own goals. That goal is for them, and they're not going to get any positive reinforcement at the end of it. The positive reinforcement is the accomplishment of that goal and success, right? So I think that you can build it in to your house, to your home, and how you do stuff. If they want to do chores, if you want them to do chores, so this is always a tricky thing. People ask me this all the time. Well, I pay them to do chores so they have pocket money. Are you suggesting that I don't pay them to do chores and they should start a business instead in order to make extra money? That's a genuine motivation usually. I need to make extra money and my parents won't give me any money. Right. I'm like, okay, that's fair. But I want to still pay them to do chores. Or there's even households where they get pocket money as a matter of course, right? It's not a lot, but they want them to have pocket money because they learn how to spend responsibly. All of those there's no judgment here. All of those are fair. Yeah. All of those are okay forms of parenting, obviously. And it's different though. When you pay a child to do chores, that's no different than paying them to do a job, right? So that's like having a job. So it certainly teaches them lots of things, in order to get the money, they had to do the work and they had to do a good job at the work, on the other end. or on the other side, you gave them money and they had to budget with it and you give them nothing more than that kind of allowance, then that's also good because it teaches something. But you can attach personal goals into all of those things. Give them a
Right.
choice of chores or how much money, give them the opportunity to negotiate it, and then set some goals where there's success at the end. Not just I clean the kitty litter out so I get money. It's like,
Right.
could you have done a better job? Could you have delegated that and then offered to pay them less money, and then you take a flow through off the head? You get your little brother to clean the kitty litter and only pay them $5, but you got $7 for it. I mean, that's pretty entrepreneurial thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I see some kids doing that, and lots of parents think that that's terrible. And it's like, actually, that's very enterprising,
Yeah.
right? So how do you work it in is just simply to have them have some choice and some sovereignty and some autonomy in what they do and how they make money, or what they do around their time spent or the extracurricular activities that they're in. It can be so many different things, right? It's just
Right.
all about setting goals and seeing them successfully complete.
And what I hear you saying too is not being so micromanaging that you
Oh,
have
true.
to try and figure out the all of the microscopic levels of, oh, you need this much money, blah blah blah, whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you are constantly having your fingers in their lives, then how are they supposed to have that autonomy if you are constantly the ones going, this is the rule, this is what we expect?
Yeah.
Okay, well, have an overall idea of what your expectations or what your intentions are for your family. But if you are constantly managing them, then they're going to lose that sense of motivation,
And
like you say. Yeah.
independence. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't get any independence. So what I do with my teens who don't have jobs and clearly don't want to start a business, which drives me crazy. It's like, come on, guys, drop shipping. It's like the easiest teen
So
business out
easy.
there. Right. No, is I give them a clothing budget. So I say, okay, I'm going to give you, $200 or $500. And this is not winter boots, or underwear,
Right.
or, those sort of essential things. Like, yes, I
Essentials.
want you, I mean, we live in Canada. Yeah, you better have a good coat and a good pair of boots. And that's kind of the way that it is. And I'm not going to make you, because they will sacrifice underwear as teen boys and the money, right? And so, no, I'll buy you your underwear. That's fair. But I said, that's it. That's your money for the whole year. And so if you want that to go farther because you want brand name things, then you're going to have to noodle your way through clothing yourself. And because two of the three homeschool, seriously, they don't even care how they look. And so they totally pocket that money, right? They've got their jeans are like 4 inches up their ankle, or their t-shirts are so small because they went through a growth spurt, or they're holey, or they smell really bad. And that's fine. I mean, so that's part of that getting your fingers out of the pot, is to
Yep.
say that I give you complete control over the outcome of this, but I'm not buying you clothes. And if you smell bad and look really weird, I'm not taking you to any outings, including restaurants. So just so we understand the boundaries and parameters of
Yes.
it's
Boundaries.
fine, but you're going to lose out on these things. If there's a wedding that we have to go through with the family, I do actually expect you to buy dress clothes, and no, you don't get to come in your sweatpants. So you're going to have to, budget for it in the anticipation of the fact that you also grow. So this is really tricky, right? I mean, I have this argument and conversation with parents all the time going, well, that's not really fair because they're $200 basketball shoes. And if their feet grow mid-season, and it's like, obviously I buy them the shoes in order to be able to do the sports and activities. And if they did buy a pair of, $100 jeans and they immediately grew out of them, I'm not buying them another $100 pair of jeans. I'll buy them a pair of
Yeah.
$35 jeans to replace it for
We'll go
sure.
to the thrift store.
Yeah, that's right. Like, I will help them that way. But if they chose to buy really expensive brand names, knowing they grow like weeds, then that's on them. So there's autonomy, there's success seen, there's goals attached to it. They understand there's budgeting, there's huge amount of financial responsibility that comes with that. And that's my model. And other people can come up with a similar model. And it's usually around money that parents get really sticky around it. So I get that question in my course. I'm actually really uncomfortable with my 7-year-old having that much money. Why? So I usually question them at the risk of actually, you know, they get mad at me and maybe they even pull their kid from the class. Legitimate, because it's a philosophy. There's a
Yeah.
philosophical approach to this. And I'd say,
Mhm.
okay, but I tell them in the class, what are you going to do with your profits? I actually ask the question. I don't tell them what to do with their profits. I ask
Yeah.
them. And if it's a group environment, they get to have that conversation amongst themselves and they self-regulate.
Mhm.
So in the online class, I do give them the suggestions other children have had, and they can think about where they sit in that spectrum with no judgment and no
Yeah.
control. I don't tell them what to do with their money, because you're removing the choice and autonomy that makes that a successful business venture. The exciting part is making gobs of money. They think they only need, what did I say to you, $10 for those
$10
Pokemon
for
cards.
okay.
Yeah, and anything they make beyond that, they think they're millionaires and all they do is run around giving it away, which is brilliant, because we're building in charity and community and giving
Yep.
back by doing
Yep.
that. But there's, that it goes from the, I'm going to give to my church with what to do with the profits. Like, I want to give the money away, and church is number one usually, which I think is lovely. Um, the next one is I'm going to blow it all on gummy bears, and I'm like, right on. So they're given
Yeah.
permission,
Yeah.
right? I'm giving you, and I think adults need this too. I give you permission to make money.
Mhm.
I, as an entrepreneur, moving from an employee to an entrepreneurial environment, I can't tell you how many times I've had to coach adults with the, okay, we're just going to say this together, and I'm going to hold your hand and say, I give you permission to make lots of money. It doesn't make you
Yep.
a bad person. That's okay. You're allowed to make money, and
This
you
is
don't have to
that's a whole
apologize.
other conversation about culture and the narrative that we grow up with around our belief about money and affluence and
That's
prosperity
right.
and abundance and all
Yeah.
this stuff, and sure that we could go on a whole other
Oh, I
episode
know.
about
Are you angry at your money? That's usually a question that I start with. Are you angry at your money? So I say, I want you to move from the role of protector to the role of mentor if they're going to start their own business. I need you to shift. I need you to
Mhm.
take a mental shift, because all entrepreneurs should have a coach or a mentor, regardless of age. And you're
Yeah.
looking for a mentor that shows you all the ways you're going to succeed, not all the ways you're going to fail. So if they come to you with, I'd like to make pants for unicorns, you're going to say, that's a great idea. I want you to say, wow, tell me more. They're going to figure
Mhm.
out really quickly that that doesn't work for all kinds of reasons. It comes up, the obstacles present themselves. They
Yeah.
totally present themselves when they're starting their own business. It's the same if
Yep.
they're setting different kinds of goals. If they say, the chore that I want to take on is I want to paint the side of the house because I really hate emptying the garbage. Okay, what's your deadline? That's fine. They reach
Yep.
pretty quickly that they can't do that they either need help and they're not tall enough, they can't move the ladder. Heck, they can't even get the paint can open. So, the obstacles present themselves. Failure ensues. They learn how to pick themselves back up, rethink the problem, and come back at it from a different point of view, and eventually achieve success. And that's what you want them to do with any goal that they set for themselves. But if they don't set it themselves, it does not feel like success for them. Yay, I finished school, but you made me go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to take away the idea of going to school, because I'm one of few homeschoolers amongst my friends. Most of my friends have kids in schools because they're professionals, and they
Mhm.
definitely put their kids in school, and their kids like school,
Yeah.
and that's fine. But they've come to me, some of them even, and said, how do we build this in? Or I'm worried about this. And I was like, well, first and foremost, you should be worrying about mental health. I
Mhm.
know that you want to deal with entrepreneurial mindset, but that can't move forward in a state of despair, anxiety, self-loathing. You're going to have to deal with that first and get to the root of that problem. And a lot of those families are coming to me thinking that my suggestions are the silver bullet, and there's so much going on underneath that has to be dealt with
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
But let's say that's all things considered equal and there's homeostasis there, then definitely setting goals and get them to start their own business, even if it's a lemonade stand. I think that that's
Yeah.
actually great.
Well, I love everything what you're saying because, you know, a lot of times, like even when I was launching my summit and I was fielding Facebook groups and it was like, why would you want to raise an entrepreneur? Let them be kids. And it's just like, this is not, you're missing the whole point.
They've
Like even
completely missed
entrepreneur
it. Yeah.
groups, even people who groups that were filled with entrepreneurs, they're like, don't tell your kid to be an entrepreneur. And it's like, no, you're missing the whole point. This is not about, like, for me, becoming an entrepreneur has been the best form of personal development that I've ever experienced. And it's like, because I've had to wake up to these things. I've had to wake up to these constructs and the mindsets and the beliefs and, you know, all these things that I've grown up with. And like, but to be able to entrepreneurship and teaching kids about entrepreneurship is really just a vehicle of teaching kids about these other soft skills that they're going to need to survive. The mental health stuff, the self motivation and autonomy and independence, all these things that kids in general just don't have, because they just don't. It's like our culture and the constructs and the systems that they grow up with, they just don't have those things. And so to say, I want to raise an entrepreneur, that doesn't mean they have to become an entrepreneur. It's just the vehicle that helps them to question the other things happening in their life, you know, question and to be able to ask questions and to self-evaluate and to become, to establish and develop those kinds of skills. And so that's what I love about what you said. And like, just,
have you seen Jody Cook? Jody Cook is a
I've had her on the podcast, actually.
Yes. Okay, cool. So Jody Cook, so they've been on the podcast and you've heard that she doesn't talk about starting your own business. She said, have your kids pack their own suitcase.
Yep.
Right. That's the same thing, is that you have to give them autonomy and responsibility. And there's a goal for success attached. If they didn't do a good job, then they don't have the needs, you know, the clothing that they need where they went. I mean, she even said her mom made them book their own dental appointments.
Nice.
So the second is, and I build that into my, you know, long before I even thought about teaching entrepreneurship, I build autonomy into my children's lives right out the get-go. And it's the being able to advocate for themselves was key, right? So our definition of success for our children is independent and self-sufficient. So, and we know what that means. I can be definitely financially independent. They're able to solve problems on their own and ask for help when they can't. They're able to feed themselves. They're able to clothe themselves. They can find a job when they need it. They can recover if they lose that job. You know, they know that they have to submit their taxes at the end of the year. They know that they should vote as a civic responsibility. You know, these little things that are built into your parenting. But one of the first acts we did was self-advocating. So, you know, I had my son steal a key from Lowe's. It had dolphins on it. And he showed it to me when we got into the van that he had taken it without asking. And so gently, with no anger, you know, it's we can't take things that don't belong to us. And you are going to need to give that back. You know, either you buy it out of your own money or you have to give it back. And he was so scared. And I was really lucky that the person who I dealt with, right? So the person at the front counter, I said, my son would like to tell you something. And he talked into his armpit for a couple of seconds and said that he didn't mean to, and he had to give it back. And she called the manager of the store. And so he looked at me and I went, it's going to be okay. And I'm right here. I am right beside you. You do not need to be scared. Nobody's going to hurt you.
Which is key too.
Nobody's going to hurt you. I didn't go in, well, you're going to go to jail. You know, like you don't, well, I've seen people do that, which is just
send them in like, good luck. See you in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, that's right. I've watched people on YouTube do that to their kids, and I think that's scarring. I said, you're fine. And nothing bad is going to happen to you, and you're not in any danger, and I won't let anything bad happen to you, but you need to take responsibility for your choices. And we need to eat some crow here, right? You need to make it right, is what we say in the family, whatever it is. Okay, that wasn't the best choice, but right now you need to make it right. And so the manager came out and said that I took that and I didn't ask for it. And he was just amazing. He said, Do you want to know how many people do that and don't have the integrity to come back and say, I made a mistake, and fess up to that mistake? So although, right, you shouldn't be taking things that don't belong to you, and I want to tell you how brave and how amazing you are. So he got all this wonderful positive feedback from being honest and true and owning up to the responsibilities in front of him. And so we do that with everything, even having to go buy a chocolate bar, or having to talk to their martial arts instructor because they didn't like
Yeah.
something that happened in class.
Yes.
I start right beside them. I am right here, but I am not speaking for you because you need to make it right, or you need to ask, or there's no reason why you can't put money on the counter and buy your own chocolate bar, right? This is a little different for my youngest one because he has performance and social anxiety. This is actually painful and traumatic for him. So I handle it differently with him.
Mm-hmm.
But the other two could handle it. They are able to, and I usually send them in. So we went from I'll stand right beside you to I'm just down the aisle to I'm just right outside to I'm out in the car, and now it's I'm a text message away, which even helps in keeping them safe and
Yeah.
honest when they're older and going out into the world. My oldest is driving, and it's the what if I get into a car accident? But that's exactly what it is. It's an accident. And
Mm-hmm.
you deal with it carefully. I will give you the tools, and I'm a text message away if you need my help and support. But you have to stay calm, and you have to admit when you've made a mistake, except maybe in a car accident, so don't say anything. It's like, but it's the we're at arm's reach, or
Yeah.
just outside, or a phone call away, but you
Yeah.
still need to stand up and communicate and advocate on your own behalf for what you need.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to go up and buy that chocolate bar by yourself, I guess you really didn't want it that badly then, did you? So that's kind of how we run it. So that's just another model of providing choice, autonomy, independence, self-sufficiency into anything that they do. And if they do want to start a business, be the mentor they not need to, they need from you, not the mentor you think you should be.
Yeah.
And even if
Yeah.
they want to make crazy heavy furniture, I want you just to smile and nod and let them go through it entirely on their own and support that notion. Most of them will start one, they will sell it once, and they will never do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Most do that. You
And to
don't
not
see
count that
them.
as like, oh no, that it's over, they're never going to want to do this ever again. It's like, okay, that's some information to log away and to experience. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay to go through those things. I mean, just listening. Okay, this is from listening to you and all the different experiences that you've had, and I'm like, I relate to you with getting all these different majors and all those things, because that was my life too. I have I can't think right now, but I have like 8 or 10 different school student cards for colleges because I have so many.
Yeah.
Anyways, and but listening to all the different experiences that you had, dance and hockey and salmon fishing and all this stuff, and I'm like, this is all about data. Like, you're just learning about yourself, getting
Yeah.
experience. There's all these things that it's like, so many of us think that success is my kid picked their thing when they were 5 and they
Yeah, I
went through
know.
school and they knew what they wanted to do, and then they became that thing and they've been working on it until they retire. Like, no, I'm sorry, that's not realistic to think that the one thing that they're going to do, they're never going to fail at it, or they're never going to have trial and error to figure out what they want to do. That's not the definition of success either. I think that
Or
we need
quitting,
to.
that they never quit.
Yeah.
Totally not true. I mean, in
Yeah.
business, we call it a pivot, right? So,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the
So it's just
quitting is okay.
allow that. Yeah. Allow those things, allow those changes, allow this, like, allow your child to try something and then be like, you know what? I'm glad I tried it, but I don't want to do this anymore. And like,
Exactly.
and not be so, there's this one TV show that my husband and I like to watch sometimes. And in the show, their teenager was like, announced that he's rejecting his college admission and going to start a band.
Right on.
And right, that's what I'm thinking too. I'm like, cool, this is great, but his parents are like, what? No, you have to go to college. But so then later in the episode, his uncle shows up, the teenager's uncle shows up, and he's like, oh, you got to listen to our band. And so they start rocking out, and you don't hear what happens until it flashes to the uncle going to the parents and going, you got to let him have this band. You just gotta. And So then the parents and uncle go back and they're listening to the band and they're bad, like really bad. he's like, you got to let him do it. And they're like, you're right. He's going to fail so bad.
Yeah.
He's going to be running back to school before his admission is over, before they start fall semester. Anyway, so it was just like this whole idea, like, why are we so uptight about like trying to micromanage our kids' lives when it's like they need that experience. They need to be able to experience for themselves, and to say like that if they don't fit into some mold of what quote unquote success looks like, that's okay. That they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna find out one way or another what success is for themselves, and more likely than not, sooner than later, if they're allowed to do it themselves.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly right. They actually might find it sooner, or they maybe won't, and that's okay, right? Maybe they flounder for a really long time, and it takes them until they're like mid to late 20s to figure it out. I mean, I didn't get into IT until 27, 28. And before that, I actually thought I was going to be a teacher. I taught for a year in China. Yeah, I came back from that. And before that, I was a manager of a handicapped group home with behavioral aggressive handicaps. I've got scars and bite marks all over me from doing that. So you just have to.
You do.
Yeah.
And I read Felicia Day's autobiography, where she talks about she was homeschooled and she was allowed to play video games all day and do all this. Like her mom only required her to like read and take like a class outside of home or something like that. Right?
That's exactly how I homeschool, is like Felicia Day's life. Yeah.
Well, I mean, she is a famous actress now. I mean, she had to go through some trial and error in there and some self-discovery. But at some point in everybody's life, you're going to go through that one way or another. And I would rather be like, okay, teenager at home now, rather than when you're 30, 40, 50 going, I hate my life, having midlife crisis, right? And meltdown city when you can't, it's harder to start over, right? So it's like, that was a great example to me. And every time somebody is like, I don't know about this homeschool stuff, I'm like, well, first of all, you need to go read something by John Taylor Gatto and then read Felicia Day's autobiography. Because everything's going to be okay. Like, just recognize that most kids, if you have that capacity to bring them home or to give them their autonomy in one way or another, they're already better off than so many kids out there that just don't have that capacity or don't have that freedom. So
yeah, I think so.
Unwind a little bit and
that's right.
It's okay.
Free range a little bit. It'll be okay. They're not going to be in a milk carton. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be okay.
They're going to be okay.
Even within the constructs of like learning, is to say, give them some autonomy within that. I mean, they still got to go to school and they still have to learn what they do, but can you give them even autonomy over when it gets done? Is it okay for them to do it at 10 o'clock at night after they've played video games for the last 4 hours? Is that okay? Can you give them that?
They'll learn quickly for themselves whether or not it is okay.
That's it. It'll either work or it won't work, right? So, it's just give them some time, autonomy, and choice. They're going to run with it if they haven't had any choice. And boy, are they going to make bad choices in the beginning. Yeah. Holy cow. And you just have to sit back and nod and go, I mean, look at what's going on right now.
Yeah.
So, they'll be okay. They're not going to forget everything. It'll be fine. You guys will be fine. You might kill each other in the process, but you'll all be. Did you see some of those memes that have come out? The ones about the one's been expelled and one's been suspended and the teacher's drinking now. Like I've just been laughing so hard about it that it's good. Yeah.
I'm glad you can laugh. Sometimes I'm like, no, this is why I'm doing what I do. So you don't have to feel that way. Come and listen and let's get some solutions together. So
I agree.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stacey, for being here. And this has been awesome. And I'm just so excited for your course. And I want to tell our audience where we can find your course.
Oh,
where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me at kids2market.com, but it's the number 2. So kids2market.com. And if you pop on there now, it will ask for your email address and you can get the first lesson for free. Which is how to actually come up with a business idea. It's a pretty neat process, a cycle to go through. Otherwise, you can buy the full course for $67, and which is like 50 lessons, right? Like, I mean, it's huge. It's actually quite a big course. And then stay tuned for a little bit later, and I'm going to be offering live group coaching within about the next 30 days. So lots of opportunities on there. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Very exciting. And what is a social, are you on social media where we can?
Yep. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram under the same name, Kids to Market, and Facebook is Kids to Market, and Pinterest as well. All the same name, Kids to Market. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you're doing, and just thank you for being here and sharing your message and sharing these ideas, because we need them. And it's encouraging to hear more and more people having these kinds of ideas, and you said, leading out. Thank you for sharing these thoughts.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.